Kieran Bailey. I'm from the Rhondda Valleys in South Wales, and I play drums and piano.
I'm Barney Southgate, and I'm from Oxford, England. However, I now live in Cardiff, Wales.
Yes!
And very much enjoy doing so.
Hi, I'm Dan Lloyd. I am an actor, musician and director. I'm from Rhoslan y Chrigog, which is the largest village in Wales.
Is that true?
It is true, yeah, it's still true. Yeah, I think by population more so than geography, but you'll have to Google it to get to the bottom of that, I think.
I will.
I now live in Llandornog, which is in the Clwyd Valley.
The smallest village in Wales.
Do you remember as children going to the theatre show where there were actors playing instruments?
Yeah, where I grew up, the closest theatre to us was the Watermill, which kind of championed a lot of the early actor musician shows. So I remember going to see their Christmas show every year, which was always an actor musician production. And then going to see Sweeney Todd, I remember that quite distinctly as well, which ended up transferring to Broadway and things. It was quite a popular, actor muso show at the time. So yeah, I do remember that.
What about you, Kieran? Do you remember
I don't know. I always seem to remember everything being played in the pit, and like if it was a musician or somebody holding a guitar on stage, you just automatically assumed it wasn't being played live,
Yeah.
So I think when I was in my last year of school, I think somebody mentioned to me that there was a new course called the Actor Muso course, because I was kind of like, I like doing a bit of drama and I liked a bit of music, but I didn't even know that it was possible to combine the two at the time when I was about 17, 18. But yeah, so I don't think I'd never seen it before, really.
And what about you, Dan? What's your recollection of that?
So in terms of witnessing shows, as an audience member, no, I don't ever remember that from an early age. But I was quite lucky, really, because our youth theatre in Rhos, and I went there with a couple of lad friends of mine. And I think presumably initially it was so that we could like hang out with girls. That was sort of an initial draw. But then once I started doing drama, I thought that was amazing. Like I loved that, and like people laughing at stuff I was doing. That was a real, that was great. That was a drug in itself. And then when we came to do a production, which we would do every year, I was already playing guitar by that point, and I was roped into the band of the production. So I was in the show and I was in the band right from the get-go, really. So the sort of the concept of marrying musicianship and acting and larking about on stage, that was, I was doing that from the get-go. So they were always sort of mutually beneficial to one another, and I was always doing the two at the same time.
And do you see yourselves as actors first and then musicians? How do you have that split in your head? What about you, Barn? What's your...
Well, I was always more of a musician than an actor, so I think I see myself as a musician who was drawn into doing a bit of acting on stage where necessary. But I think it varies. I think it's not always as clear cut as it being more one than the other. But for me personally, it was. I think I saw myself more as a musician. And
how did you get into the college? Because you went to Rose Bruford, didn't you? So it was
was
that your first choice and everything?
No, it wasn't actually. And initially I heard, because my background was entirely music based, I sort of reached the age of about 17 and was just sick of playing music. So I decided to go a completely different direction and become an actor instead. So I applied to all the drama schools and I didn't get into any of them. But then Rose Bruford went, well, he can play the piano quite well, so we'll take him on that basis. So I then wound up going there. And although I'd been to see a lot of actor musician shows when I was younger, I guess I wasn't, if someone had said, what show was it, I wouldn't have called it an actor musician show. So I wasn't really aware of what actor musicianship was necessarily. But quite quickly realised that actually that was the ideal course for me, because as much as I was ready to have a bit of a break from music, at the same time it was sort of so ingrained in me that I really enjoyed being able to do the two, really.
So me, I suppose when I was 18 and just leaving to you do the university thing. I just started getting a bit of interest in drama and stuff, but always came from a strong music background, doing like playing in bands and stuff. So I suppose I thought, like, because I've been with music for so long, I felt like I dedicated loads of time to that. So that was the thing I should continue. I wasn't aware until the last minute of the courses, like Barney was talking about, like the acting muso courses. So I kind of just thought, right, I've got to do the music, and I did that. And it wasn't until after like university, and I'd been working as a musician for a couple of years, and then I kind of you gave me my first audition actually for Tom, wasn't it? And I went there thinking I was going to end up playing drums in the pit band. And then I think you gave me a script, or Leanne gave me a script or something. They said, right, go outside now, learn this, and come back in. And I was like, what? Like, go outside, learn this, come back in and perform it. I thought, So I went outside and I thought, I may as well have a go in it. And I went outside, learned it, came back in and just gave it what I could. And that was the kind of first time I was able to marry the two, really. You know, like Dan was saying, you know, we all like larking about on stage and stuff and having a laugh, but we love playing the music as well. So I definitely think I come from the music background, in answer to the question. And it took me a couple of years to even think of the word actor as being something that someone could call me, you know what I mean? I'm taking it on now.
Oh, you embraced it, like. And what about you, Dan?
I've always identified as an actor and a musician. You know, I've never had a problem with it, but I've been aware that there are other people do like to distinguish between an actor musician and an actor. It's kind of a weird thing, and I've been aware of myself in certain productions that it's sort of people always want to categorize and people always want to pigeonhole. And I think some people think that if you're an actor musician, you kind of neither actor or musician. You're just an amalgam. You're just a compromised version of those two things. I've been aware of feeling like that. And I also think that the actor musician is a different fraternity to that of the brotherhood of actors, or whatever, the sisterhood or whatever that Scrabble is. I think somehow that actor musicians tend to be a different breed. I think that it's actor musicianship and productions that have involved acting musicianship seem to be a little bit more collaborative. We don't take ourselves as seriously as actors, I think. And I don't know what that is, and it's really difficult to pinpoint, but it's just a general feeling that I have. But I personally have always identified as being an actor and a musician. I'm proud of that, and don't feel that my musicianship or my acting is compromised as a result of having those two skills as part of my makeup.
That's interesting. That is actually about because sometimes if I give a note that's an acting note, you know, to an actor muso, it's sometimes you sort of got, it's like you almost got to go, right, are they being the larky bout musician now? And then sometimes you give the note like in sort of like as a joke, and then it's like, oh, hang on, they come back with this serious actor edge, and I'm thinking, oh no, it's almost like taking the world, you know. It's really weird how that sometimes you've got to pitch it right, you've got to pitch the note right, because you are an amalgam of them both, you know. So it's funny you should say that about this, how you go from one to the other. Not that actors are far more serious than musicians. I'm not saying that for one moment. But there is a different energy, especially I suppose because the shows that we've done together, like Tom, it's very much the band, wasn't it? It was those boys. You know, you really felt that when you give in, because if you went in to give a note to the senators then in that show, you'd all crowd round. Like, you'd all like, oh, hang on, what's she talking about now? Do you know what I mean? It was like very much giving the band the note, like. It did feel like that a lot, actually, especially specifically with that show, really.
There's something about that, though, isn't there? In a rehearsal room, if you were just actors and you were trying to recreate the camaraderie of a band, you know, you'd be looking at how to act that. But when you are the band in the show about the band, there's all of a sudden this kind of subconscious shorthand language going on where you just become that pack. You become that band. And those bonds are strengthened through playing together, through playing with one another, listening to one another. And these are all skills that are absolutely transferable between actors and musicians. You know, you're talking about what note you give and trying to find what the language is in order to convey a note to an actor. Well, it's, you know, as musicians, we all have an understanding of the, you know, the terminology and the language of music. And, you know, if you say that you want that something to happen a bit quicker or louder, or, you know, the dynamics of that, it's all in, you know, we understand what that is. Whereas if you go to a proper actor and you say, can you just say that quicker? They go, well, don't dare to ask me to say it very quicker. You know, they want the right impulse and they want to know why. Whereas actually, you know, I'm being disingenuous there, but I think there's a lot of transferable language between the two disciplines.
Yeah, definitely. So what would you say were your, like Barney coming to you, like were your influences musically?
Well,
I know this is like a massive question. You're all going to, you know, reel off obscure jazz musicians that no one has heard of.
I think it's definitely changed with time, and I think that's a good thing, because it also means that the type of music you play changes with time. So when I first started playing the piano, I think the first thing I ever learned was Fatboy Slim Praise You, and he played this thing on a piano that sounded just like it did on the record. So that was kind of the thing that got me playing the piano. But then the first sort of piece of music I learned was a ragtime piece called The Maple Leaf Rag by Scott Joplin. And so I kind of then got into I became a bit obsessed with playing this really crazy fast stuff. So I guess he was an influence early on. But from there, when I realized I wanted to try and become, you know, a professional musician, I decided to start training classically and really taking that seriously. So I kind of then became completely enamored with classical music and classical musicians. And then cut to 10 years later, and I started playing more jazz, and I kind of play a lot of New Orleans music now. But then also through, say, working with actor musicians and on Actor Muso shows, you find yourself playing music that you might not be that familiar with, and suddenly you kind of really tap into that. So I think like if you ask someone what their favorite film is or their favorite, it changes with time. And I think that's a good thing, because it means that you are also evolving and, you know, learning new styles and things.
What about you, Kieran?
I suppose when I was a teenager, I was a bit of a metalhead, to be honest. So, like, Pantera was one of my favorite bands, and, you know, Slayer a little bit more extreme. But I used to love, like, the theatrics of the metal as well, like, you know, with Slipknot with the masks and stuff. I loved all the drama of it, you know, and Marilyn Manson with all his makeup and everything, and, you know, I loved all that shock. It's like theatre in rock music then, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, for playing the drums, I used to love playing along to, like, Green Day or Blink-182 or NoFX and stuff. But then as I started taking the piano slightly more seriously, then I don't know, I never really, I'm not a pianist, I think I'm a piano player. You know, I just bash the chords and chuck in a couple of licks that I've stolen off Barney. You know, and, but I think with the piano, I like the social aspect of the piano. You know, I like having a party around the piano. So that's and having a laugh and playing. Piano's just good for that, and that's why I like that.
What about, like, practicing piano and, you know, the instruments? You know, would you have been, as a child, gone through the grades and all that? Dan, did you do grades?
No, I didn't know. Like Kieran, I always loved the theatre of big bands. Like, I loved Queen. You know, I've got Freddie Mercury up there. I love the Muppets as well for the same reason. But, you know, bands like The Who were big. I loved Bowie. I loved how he could, you know, I loved the imagery that came with all those bands. So there's loads I could reel off. But in terms of finding the guitar as you know, as my instrument, I didn't really have much interest in playing the guitar. My brother had a guitar for his, I think his 10th birthday, no, perhaps his 8th or 9th birthday. And he thought that he would be Slash just by receiving a guitar for his birthday, and then found out pretty quickly that wasn't the case. And just to kind of spite him, I picked it up and learned chords just so that I could show that I was progressing before him. It was literally just to wind my brother up. And I got a lot to thank him for in that respect, because I found that it was, you know, absolutely my thing, and I fell in love with it and have pursued it ever since. And then in terms of musical influences, there were some obvious ones, but then as I've got older, I've opened that out to much more broader genres and much less snooty about it. I'm kind of open to all kinds of music, where when I was a teenager, perhaps that would have been a little bit more of a narrow channel. yeah, it was just to spite my brother, really.
Nice.
And now it's an illness.
Did you do grades, Barney?
I did, yeah, but it was sort of a means to an end for me because I remember being told to go to piano lessons when I was about 8 or whatever, and absolutely hating it and being told to practice scales and all that. And I think finally my parents, when I got to grade 4, went, right, this is too much hassle. Do your grade 4 and we'll leave it there. So that's what happened. I didn't touch a piano again for a few years. And then when I learned Fatboy Slim, I then went, oh, actually, I really want to play this. And something changed in my head. And suddenly I wanted to do the grades. And it suddenly became so much easier because I'd made a choice to do them rather than sort of being pushed into doing them. So I think whenever people starting out learning an instrument ask me, you know, what the best way to go about it is, I'd always say start off by just finding a piece of music or a song or whatever that you want to play, because that's just a great way to find the kind of passion for playing it initially. Because once you've got that, then doing the grades and things kind of becomes enjoyable. As I say, it was a means to an end because I went, I want to become a professional. Right, professionals have to do the grades, is what I thought. So then I just sort of rocketed through them and went from there. I don't think it's essential to do grades on an instrument in order to, you know, make a career as an act musician or even a musician, but I think it is useful.
I'm self-taught on guitar. I can't read music, and I've never had any music lessons. So what Barney was talking about in terms of find something that you love that's driving your sort of progress, that was never an issue because there was always songs to learn. You know, the guitar is a really accessible instrument. You know, you can pick it up, get 3 chords, and all of a sudden you've got a whole world of music, you know, available to you that you can play. But I do regret that I hadn't learned a bit more musical theory. I wish I had that behind me. I think that would and you know would have and would still serve me well. And it's never too late to do that. But that is something that I feel is a gap in my knowledge that I wish I had.
Yeah, with musicians generally, there's those that play by ear and kind of just pick stuff up more instinctively, like Dan's just described, and then there tends to be those that have done it more academically and perhaps, you know, are very good readers but aren't so good at playing by ear. And I think trying to be a combination of the two is usually the best way to go about it. And I think most, if not all, of the actor musos that I've worked with tend to be that. Whether that comes from, you know, the acting side of it and having and being used to, you know, taking scripts and then bringing them to life and things, I don't know. But yeah, I think it's useful if you can have a mixture of both. What
about you, Kay? What's your?
Well, I got quite excited then because Barney said, I thought I had a bit of ammunition over Barney when he said he stopped at grade 4. Actually, on paper, I might be more qualified on the piano than Barney. But then he said that he's done his grade 8, so I'm a bit disappointed at that. I'm going to remind him about that every time he questions me. So yeah, I did do the grades when I was a kid, but like Barney said, I was forced into it. I was forced into piano when I was, not forced, like, but you know, heavily persuaded to go to piano lessons and not to give up until I was sure I didn't want to do it anymore. So I kind of practiced because it became just a routine thing to do. You know, you have to do your half hour before you can go out and, you know, in the sun with your friends or whatever. But then I picked up drums because I wanted to, rather than piano, which I was made to do. Right. So I really loved the drums then, and that took over through like my whole teenage years, really, and became my main instrument. I did grades on that as well, but I think with the drum grades, it was a lot more like how to work in a band and how to work in an environment, you know, like that. Whereas the piano, like Barney was saying, it's just endless scales, broken chords, arpeggios. And when you're doing them as a kid, you think, what's the point of this? You know, it just sounds good. But then, you know, as you get older and you can kind of marry the two, that all these songs you love are made out of these scales and these chords, you know, so you think, oh, okay. And something clicks then and you just go, oh, all right, yeah, it's that. You know, so.
What grades did you do up to on the drums, Kieran?
I got a distinction in my grade 8, actually.
Is it not true, Barn, that you were an absolute beginner on the banjo?
I've heard a rumour.
Kieran very kindly, when we were working together, bought me a book on how to play banjo. So thank you, Kieran.
Yeah, you haven't mentioned the banjo.
I got it right here, actually.
Do any of your parents play? Are you from a family that's, because you were saying, Kieran, that you're
Yeah, yeah. I was like I said, not forced into, but pushed to the piano because my grandmother was like a pianist and an organist when that kind of took over. She used to do like the clubs and stuff, many of which I've done now myself. But she was an organist, and she basically was like the karaoke machine of the day, I suppose. When there was a lot more, obviously, skill involved because you had to change key on the spot, or people would bring a sheet music and put it in front of us, say, "Oh, this is an E flat, but can you play it in, I don't know, F or something?"
Right.
Because I can't sing it in this key, I need it in this key. So she had a really good head for music. I find that a lot more challenging than perhaps she did, but
you just press the transpose button.
Exactly, just press the transpose button. Yeah. Before the days of transpose buttons.
Can I ask, have you got like a bugbear when you're in the rehearsal room as an actor muso? Is there something that really, cheeses you off? Like, is there something, whether it's musical or acting, really? Is there something that that's annoying?
I think one thing that immediately springs to my mind is when people are noodling in a. So by noodling, that guitarists, I'm afraid, Dan, tend to be quite bad for this. They'll have their guitar on. We would have finished rehearsing the song, but there seems to just be something subconscious that just happens, and they start twiddling away and playing whatever it is. And when you've got, say, up to 15 or 20 actor musos in a room, and they all start doing that, it's just a cacophony.
Yeah, I second that.
I quite like that. I don't mind that. I haven't got a problem with that whatsoever.
Anybody else got a bugbear?
Not really. I'm on the same of the same opinion as Barney there. When noodling does get on my nerves a bit, but I play the drums, so if they start, they're gonna lose. I'll just test my cymbals. It doesn't work in like.
And in this sort of current situation now, where how are you finding? Because I sort of feel that people that can, I'm really jealous of people who actually can play instruments, because you have got something else to sort of fill your time, I suppose. And it's quite this a Zoom or digitally, and you can record stuff and you can sense it. It's far easier than, like we've all found out, we can't do live theatre like this. It's impossible. But whereas you've also found ways of using the music to get you through this. So I was just wondering how you all are feeling about it at the moment.
I'm just trying to use the time as constructively as possible, just to try and get my repertoire up and just, I don't know, just keep ticking over and not lose, just so I'm ready to go when we get back out. All the things that I put off practicing for ages because luckily I was in work, and you think, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I just had some time just to do that? So I'm just spending my time trying to do that. It's not working, but I'm having a go.
I found that I've gone back to guitar playing as a kind of relaxation thing. So the last few nights, for example, I'm at home with the kids all day, every day at the minute, while Ellen, my wife, is working. So work-wise, everything's kind of been put on hold to a certain point, so that my main focus is looking after the kids. So once they've gone to bed and everyone's gone to bed, I've just been sitting and noodling and playing the guitar without any real, end to it, really. Normally you'd be thinking about maybe writing a song or rehearsing for something. So it's been quite nice, really, to just have it as a bit of a companion again. Because I think for a long time it was something that was it was a tool that I used for work, or it was, for a gig that I was doing with a band or myself. It was something that I did for a living, where actually I kind of re-engaged with it as a kind of companion, and that's been really lovely. And in doing so, my playing has improved from just spending time with it, and my approach to it is different. So I'm just kind of seeing it through a different prism. It's been quite nice to fall in love with the instrument again like that.
I completely agree with Dan. I think lockdown made me realise earlier on that I've only really been going to the piano when I've been learning something for a show or developing an idea for a show or whatever. It's always sort of become about the work. So it was really nice for a while to just be approaching it like you did when you were first starting out and things, just for enjoyment or to try and develop your skills, like Kieran said. I have to admit, it's by month 3 started to reach a point where I kind of would like to be doing something, you know, for work again, because you do reach a point where you feel like you're floating aimlessly with what you're playing. But on the whole, it's been lovely to approach it that way again. I think one of the things that is tricky about being a musician in lockdown is that, yes, you can go to your instrument and play all day long. There's no way, though, that you can play with other musicians using anything like Zoom, or, you know, the delay is just too much. So I miss that. I miss being able to, you know, to play with other musicians, because that's sort of a huge part of playing a musical instrument, obviously. So it'll be nice to be able to do that again. But I suppose the final thing that I'd say is that I've also sort of had to, as we all have, adapt the way that I play music. So the projects I have worked on since lockdown, it's been about recording more and then recording stuff with other musicians and working and playing with them that way, or with singers and things. So, you know, it's been quite nice to, you know, develop that skill as well. But I'm looking forward to, jamming with people again. That'll be nice.
You find yourself, you know, practicing these things, and just in the back of your mind, you just think, I hope I can actually use this one day. You know what I mean? For something. I hope somebody can hear me do this, or, you know, I can play it on a stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you've all sort of worked in, and you've developed as well from being just like a musician or an actor or whatever, into other sort of roles within theatre and things. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that, really? You know, I know, Dan, you've developed from, you know, and you're looking at other aspects now. Do you know why you want to, you know, develop as a director, or, you know, how that's come about?
I don't know. I think that's something that's always been there, really. I think that it's, you know, I've been working as a professional actor for about 16 years now, and I think the desire to be a director was always there. I directed stuff when I was in university, and I enjoyed it then, but I never really felt like I had enough of a confident voice, so I wasn't sure what my voice as a director would sound like. And truth is, you don't really until you start doing it. But I feel like, having had the experience I've had and working in different mediums as an actor and a musician, I think, you know, my confidence grew from that. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe now is the time to, you know, use all of that experience and try and focus that and try and find what the director in me can do.
And what about you, Barney? Because you're MDing.
Yeah.
More now.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Well, I think, again, I'm fortunate in that I think playing the piano is quite a useful foundation for understanding a lot of other instruments as well. And that's just through the layout of the piano, really. Like, you can see it literally goes from lowest note to highest note, whereas something like a guitar, there'll be one note here and another, the same note there, and it's a bit harder to understand from a visual standpoint. So I think I always had a kind of an understanding of arranging and that kind of thing. And you know, over time, I would be asked to do bits and bobs when I was on an actor musician show, if it was sort of, you know, adapting a song slightly because of someone being ill or whatever it was. And yeah, I think I really enjoy composing music and arranging music and working as a musical director. And, you know, over time found that because I do see myself more as a musician than an actor, I sort of began to steer more towards that and find that I felt more comfortable doing that, and enjoyed doing that more. And also, I think it felt like it was a way for me to continue working in theatre, but not necessarily having to. I mean, a lot of theatre might involve being away for long periods of time and things like that. And as your circumstances change, you kind of want to try to be home more. And so I think on my part, it was partly that as well. But yeah, I mean, the other thing is to try and be available in a range of disciplines. So quite often when I think I've retired from acting, I'm drawn back on stage to play a 16-year-old boy, in a school classroom. So, and very much enjoy doing so.
In the Wales, in the valleys of Wales.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with you, Kieran, because you've recently just MD'd a show.
I did one last year, yeah, and last Christmas. It was It's a Wonderful Life, and I was like the Foley artist on it as well, so like making all the live sound effects and doing a bit of voice acting in it, like a live radio play. So that was my first. I've always like toyed with writing music or doing things like that on the side, but it was nice to have the pressure, just to say, oh, that's my role now. I've got to arrange these like harmonies and stuff. I was doing some of it in the dressing room with Barney actually on your show. On your yeah.
That's really rude.
Yeah. I should have been putting my effort into Eye of the Storm. I was already.
Yeah. What a surprise.
But yeah, it was nice though, just to have the opportunity to go. Oh, I can decide what harmonies we're going to use, and arrange these things the way I wanted to do it, and it was great. And the Foley thing, just thinking.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. How am I going to get that sound, and what's going to look interesting to create those sounds in front of the audience, So yeah. I
do remember speaking to somebody actually, Kieran, who'd seen the show and said that you were mesmerising. So do you think it was? Do you think it was
Correct.
Do you think it was because that whole acting background as well came into play as well on it?
Yeah, unless it was probably my gran or something you spoke to. No, but yeah, so the acting side of it. I think because it's a live radio play, and obviously it's good. When you think of it like that, I think, watching a live radio play, is that going to be interesting? It's also going to be like, why are we watching this? So, but I think the whole aspect of it, we created this live studio, and as soon as we came in, we were the characters. You know what I mean? We were in New York in my little studio, and then setting up. I was setting up my Foley table, checking out the script. What are we doing today? So it was. The story was that a group of actors came in on Christmas Eve and did this show. The audience were immersed in it, hopefully. So it was all about if you made a mistake or if something was going wrong, the audience were like, oh, how's he going to get out of this now? Like if one mic wasn't working and I'd have to do all the sound effects on the other one, run back to my mic. So
cool.
I think the audiences who were lucky or / unlucky enough to see one of those performances, there was so much going on that I think they feel, oh, we were lucky to see that because we saw him digging himself out of a hole, and it's entertaining, because the show must go on in that situation because it's supposed to be live, and that's the end of it.
I think so, because I saw that show. I think one of the things that was mesmerising, and that is actually the case with actor musician shows, is was seeing you doing the Foley stuff and getting an insight into how those sound effects were created. So, I can't think of an exact example, but what was some of the ones you did? You had the door closing, didn't you? And it was just a tiny little door, whereas it sounded like it was a big front door closing. And so that was quite mesmerising to see. And I think in the same way, in actor musician shows, one of the things that's quite appealing for an audience is seeing the instruments on stage rather than not being able to see them when they're in, say, a more conventional musical. So suddenly that sound that you might not associate with the double bass, you go, oh, well, there's someone plucking a double bass. That's what a double bass sounds like. And there's something, to use your word again, quite mesmerising about seeing all of that. So I think it's nice when an audience sort of get almost an insight into you know, how these things are achieved, and it's almost like you're seen backstage for a second.
Yeah, I think that's you know, I think that's one of the things that I struggle with. I think with the Actor Muso shows is that when I work with you, and it's like there's a real sort of like purist thing of like everything has to be live.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're quite, all of you really are quite, you don't want tracks on stuff, and like sometimes we have to because it's like actually I've run out of people on stage or whatever. We need to sort of like fix things, you know. But I do, you know, it's interesting how you all are like, no, I can play this. You'll almost work it out between you. Say, no, I can cover that. I can cover that live. That. So what do you think that is then about your almost like you just fervently just want this thing, everything to be played live on stage? You know, what do you think that is?
Not just that as well. I mean, I would add to that in that, you know, I've been involved in some productions where it's actor musician, but actually you're a musician in a show, but it's not an acting musician show. So the director has taken the decision to hide the band, but you are still playing. And then it's kind of like, well, you're not celebrating acting musicianship in its true form. You know, you're just saving on the fact that you haven't got to pay a musician and an actor. You're saving a fee.
Yeah.
So that there's that as well. But I think it's that thing of going back to the theatre of creating music on stage. You know, you shouldn't ever hide that. I think visually that's really interesting. I think that's part of, you know, the visual appeal of it. And, you know, in the same way that seeing a Foley artist create that sound or create that thing from nothing, in the same way that you see a puppeteer, you know, bring something to life that is an inanimate object. Otherwise, it's all of that, creating stuff from nothing. And I think visually that's really cool. I mean, I love seeing all that stuff. I go one step further again. I love seeing all the you know, the bump as well. I love seeing guitar amps and drums and pedals and all the stuff that's used to make that thing. I know that can be a real headache for a designer who just wants clean lines. Or, you know, I remember doing Animal Farm in Theatre Clwyd and Mark Bailey insisting that my guitar was wrapped in a woolen kind of fleece so that it was looked like the sheep that was playing it. And it was just like, what is going on here? Like, you know, it was kind of like, I get where he's coming from, absolutely. I'm sure it looked great, but at the time I remember thinking, why are we like hiding these instruments? Why, if we're making this actor musicianship, why aren't we, you know?
Yeah, I think that was a real
off the one really, but it's interesting where that sits and what the reasons are for a production to choose actor musicianship as the medium that they're choosing to tell that story in the first instance is interesting.
Yeah, because I think that was a real tough lesson for me when I did Princess and the Hunter. I think that was probably one of the first actor muso shows that I did, and I remember one of the reviews said, "Why has she hidden the band?" And I think it was like there was like you know, loads of muslin and things like that going on. I was just thinking, oh, and yeah, it was all about the visual for me, and I thought, oh, well, people don't want to see the band, but as soon as it's like, why would you not? Like, they're there playing them, playing these instruments. And I think, and it's been brilliant, you know, doing those shows over the years now, and just the audience just being enamored by the fact that they absolutely love that they can see these actors go from character back onto drums, you know, whatever it is, you know, and you sort of, I've underestimated that, the power of that, really. And I just want to talk a little bit actually about the actor muso thing, because, you know, it is from a director's point of view and a company's point of view, we're getting two skills there in one, aren't we? You know, without being sort of like contentious or anything, but do you think that there should be a different pay structure for people that are bringing that skill to the table? Do you you know?
Aye.
Yeah, I do.
You know what I mean? Because it's like it does, you know, no, you know, you were saying that like, people love to see the actor musos, but you know, it's like you sometimes feel that you're getting a band, you're getting a live band on stage and actors, whereas normally you would probably have a band in the pit and you'd have actors on stage. You would be paying. So it's a strange one for me, because I do think the value that you're getting on that production is huge, really.
I think I believe that Equity do actually insist upon an additional amount for an actor musician. I know they do in London, in the West End theatres. As for regional theatre, I think I'm not entirely sure, but it's a higher bracket than say an actor's wage if you are bringing an actor musicianship element to the table. But yeah, I certainly agree that quite often you're getting two skill sets, which is obviously going to be very beneficial for a company, and so yeah, I think it should be appreciated in that way.
Yeah.
It's quite a difficult one to unpick, really, because you might have someone I mean, there are criteria and guidelines, like you said, Barn, that Equity kind of have put in place. But if you play several instruments in a show, there's different fees that you can get for that then. But if you're in a company where you might be only employing 2 actor musicians and the rest aren't musicians, and then everyone's on different wages then, and then there's that whole company rate thing that goes out the window. So it's a really difficult one to sort of to balance. But yeah, I'm all for the discussion.
And how do you think, like going forward now, like I was saying earlier on, about young people, calling an org and saying, what's the future for the industry? And I don't want to bring it all on a downer, but how do you feel going forward? Because I know this. Sorry, I know there's some venues are not going to even open until probably spring next year and things. So how do you feel about it, really?
I'm just really hoping that it's going to bounce back even stronger, and that hopefully even people who perhaps weren't aware of how much choice there was out there to go and see how many opportunities they missed out on by not going to see that production. And there was, is that tonight? Oh, no, I won't bother. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think now that it's not there, I'm hoping people are thinking, we should have gone to see that when it was there. We should have gone to see it as soon as it comes back. I'm going to, and I hope that hunger is there now. So when we are allowed to open again, it just comes back tenfold. Hopefully, that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hopeful that that's the case as well, but I'm fearful that it won't be. I'm scared that this will change the habits of theatre goers and gig goers for a long time. So I'm very nervous about what the future looks like in terms of that. When pubs reopen and when gigs go on again, I'm confident that we'll be able to get some gigs. But in terms of larger scale productions, I think it's going to be a long time before they get going again. I suppose having other skill sets, being active musicians, maybe that stands us on a good ground. But yeah, I'm scared, truth be told, as to what the future looks like.
The digital thing just isn't the same for me, is it? I've been doing these just for a laugh and just to keep everybody's sanity. I've been doing these weekly live shows on Facebook Live and stuff.
The sanity bit.
It's not that bit, is it? No. It's making it worse.
Sorry, Kieran.
No, but I just think some people have said, some people have said, you've got to keep this up after lockdown ends. And I'm like, absolutely not. As soon as lockdown ends, I want it to be in real life again. I want it to be in the pub or the club that was, and come and do it down there, and let's get drunk and have a good time rather than like this, over the computer screen. I think once it's time for it to end, I want all this technology to go.
Yeah. I think you're right, though. I think because there is a danger that people say, well, you put that online. Why don't you just put it online? For us, for schools, we've had big discussions about, right, should we record a performance, or should we put it on radio, or should we, because we won't be able to do it live or whatever. And you're thinking, yeah, but that's not what we do. That's, I don't want schools coming back to me going, we'll just have the video, because that isn't what it is. That does worry me slightly. But I think there's so much support for the shows that we do that I think the schools will go, no, we definitely will be coming back.
I think kids deserve that experience of sitting in the theatre and watching it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Around, when everyone's there together, and it's gonna miss. Miss that.
You'll never fit all those kids in your mum's lounge.
Exactly.
She'll go mad.
She'll go mad. They'll all have to take their shoes off, mind.
Yeah.
I learned the hard way, didn't I? Leslie, if you're watching.
All right, then I'm going to just finish up now then. So basically we have the casting of, when we do the Theatre and Oak feature film, who will play you in the feature film?
Can we cast one another?
Come on then, Dan.
Kieran, Vin Diesel, or Jason Statham. I think it would be an all-action. Barney, I reckon. Who's the bloke that played Catweasel?
I don't know.
Wait, what?
Catweasel.
Come on then, I'm going to Google it.
No, I reckon someone like is it Jeff Bridges?
Oh, hang on now. No offence, Barn, but
Who's Jeff Bridges?
he's not Jeff Bridges. There's no way. We can't go Jeff Bridges for you now. Come on.
So who's the Weasel Man?
You.
Somehow that sounds a bit more fitting. I hate to say.
Well, thank you very, very much. You.
Hang on, we haven't said who Dan's been played by yet. That's got to
Oh
be
yeah, Dan.
I got no idea with Dan.
Ali Jones.
I think Barney should be drawn by Quentin Blake, and it should be like a cartoon series.
Right, so it's either Weasel Man or Quentin Blake.
Yeah.
You could Vin Diesel.
I should definitely be. What's his name? Who's the guy that people saying that looks like his less successful brother? What's his name now?
Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling's less successful.
Yeah.
Just because he's in lockdown.
Yeah.